Welcome back to another episode of Excuse My Grandma. It's Kim and my co-host,
Grandma Gail.
So this week we are talking all about being a mom of a young kid and that entering that stage of life. I don't know anything about it, but
It's a wonderful, wonderful time. It's the time where you're no longer an independent person or couple, but you now have an added wonderful addition, and it changes your life.
woohoo.
So who is our guest?
I was thinking about this the other day. I was having a conversation with my friend because she was saying, I think, like she had a family member having a baby. Do you shop for a baby before it's born?
Well, certain people do. I always thought it was sort of not such good luck, so I didn't.
Yeah.
I actually didn't even pick out colors for the rooms. I made everything neutral, usually yellow. I didn't pick
But then
pink
you
or
have
blue
to
because I
deal-
didn't know the sex of my children. But now
What?
it's different. No, because, when I had a baby, I didn't, first of all, I got pregnant very quickly, and I didn't even think about it, and it didn't matter if I had a girl or a boy, so I
What
did
are
everything
you
yellow.
talking about? You didn't get the gender?
No. That's a recent development. I mean, maybe the last 40 years or so, but not when I had children.
Wow. I feel like that just...
My doctor, actually, I'll tell you a funny story. He had a piece of paper, and he's told Poppy and I we're going to have a boy. And, of course, then afterwards, I ended up having a girl. And he said, oh, no. He opened up his desk. He said, see, he had two pieces of paper. One had a boy and one had a girl. He was covered.
Right.
He was covered.
So you just had a backup name for either or something?
Well, we didn't really have, we didn't pick, we had names. Yes, we selected some names, but we really didn't do the actual naming until the baby was born.
That's crazy because I feel like then you have to deal with all of those things while you have a newborn versus doing
No. You do that when you're, like the day either of having it or the day afterwards. I mean, when I had children, I stayed in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. So it was like a vacation for me. And then we decided on the name. But we sort of knew the choices. We had a name picked for a boy and a name picked for a girl.
What do you think of how people do gender reveals now?
Well, I
Like they post on, like they have a party where you pop a balloon and on
Right.
the inside
I
it's
think
either
it's cute.
pink or blue.
I mean, I think it's cute. I actually think too much conversation before the actual baby is born is a little over the top. I'm a little superstitious, so
Yeah,
I
right.
wouldn't do it.
Right. Okay. Well, this week we are talking to Cameron Rogers, who has a young child of her own. Her son, I think, is about 18 months. And she is a podcaster. Her podcast is called Freckled Foodie and Friends. And she was just acquired by a company called Dear Media. And her podcast has been around for about 4 years. So she definitely has a great audience following her. And she talks all about motherhood. So...
Let's listen to her, Kim.
Okay, guys, we are joined by Cameron Rogers. She's the host of the podcast Freckled Foodie and Friends, which is focused on removing the stigmas around marriage, motherhood, and mental health. Cameron, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I am a little congested today, so my voice is a bit all over the place, but I have to say, I'm really jealous that you guys are doing this because my grandma is like my favorite human on this planet and we're very close. And quite honestly, I'm like, why the heck didn't I think about doing this? It's such a good idea.
Well, you're successful just on your own. I've been listening for a while,
And
but
you have a baby, so you have lots of good things to talk about.
We're still
thinking about that.
well, like I want to think about boyfriend and then husband and then
Right.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Good.
But I want to hear about your relationship with your grandmother as well. But first, let's just start with what we ask all of our guests: your age, relationship status, and where you're from.
I am 31. I'm married. We've been married for 4 years now. And I say I'm from New Jersey. I was technically born in New York and lived here until I was 3, but like all of my childhood memories are from New Jersey.
Love it.
Metropolitan area.
Yes, exactly.
And you are a new mom. How old is your son?
I wonder when I like can stop saying new.
New,
because
I know.
still say it.
Well, when he's 21.
Yeah,
then he'll be an old son.
Yeah, like postpartum, we're always postpartum, right? He is about to be 19 months. So still
Terrible twos.
we're entering in this like toddler phase where he has found his likes and dislikes and his personality, and it is a wonderful ride.
It certainly is. Wait till he really takes off. Well, he's walking now, I guess, all over the
Yes,
place.
yeah.
So that's where it all becomes, it's like curiosities into everything.
Everything.
They're
His
very
like
cute.
biggest thing, the AirPods. He loves opening our drawers and taking out all of our AirPods and then organizing them on his chair.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
it's great, but I'm worried one day I know something's just going to go
Goodness.
missing, and that
I
drawer
was just
has
going
like
to say,
our
then you're going to have to go to
wallets.
the emergency room and have to have an X-ray.
I know. Well, he actually doesn't open them, like,
Oh.
thankfully. It's just the cases.
Oh, okay.
Very
Good.
funny.
Good.
Do you remember like all the different stages of childhood, Grandma? Like,
I remember everything, but we didn't have all these contraptions. We
Right,
had
right.
picture toys. Those have been around forever. I mean, I'm not from the prehistoric age.
yeah.
I had children in the 60s and the 70s, but they were more simpler toys, a lot of plastic that little things would fit into places. Now everything is so high tech and it's a whole different thing. I think kids are much smarter now. They were sort of dumb. They got
Really?
smarter as they went to school, but it was sort of, everything was simpler. So it was
I
a simpler way of bringing them up.
When did you feel like your son was like an actual human in a way, like starting to have his own thoughts and stuff?
So he has, quite honestly, like, always been a very old soul. And I say this, we are convinced he's my grandpa reincarnated. Like, my whole family has this belief. They're very similar. They look very similar, like, he's a lover. If he could do anything all day, it would be lay in my arms like a blanket and just cuddle and kiss and hug. Like, he's such a lover. And he always felt, I said this from very early on, like, you felt like you could communicate with him and that he was always in on the joke. And now that he's so extremely verbal for his age, it's quite astonishing. And he really is in on the joke. Like, I'll say a joke to other people that he should not at all understand, and he's laughing like at the right time.
Wow.
And then he's like spinning. I can't even, like, the other day I was waiting in line at the UPS store and there was a woman in front of him and we both are kind of sick. So I like wiped his nose and he was like, boogers. I'm like, yes, I'm taking off your boogers. And then the woman turns around and was like, wow, that's amazing. I'm like, yeah, he's verbal. And then he looks her dead in the eye and goes, boogers, and starts laughing.
He knew he
and
had
I'm
her.
like,
Right.
He knows when he's performing for a crowd, if that makes sense.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
I don't remember an exact period, but quite honestly, like, from really early on, I felt like he gets me. Like,
Well,
he
it's
just
also
understands me.
It's also the first child, so they
Right.
get it because they're spending a lot more time with you and your husband, I gather.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what happens. By the time you have your second, you sort of ignore you're ignoring them. They let them lay in the crib with the wet diaper. Oh, who cares?
I
You
know,
don't have to
I'm a
get 'em
middle
up out of
child.
bed. Right. Especially a middle child. A middle child definitely has less.
Forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. So
How did you meet your husband?
In high school.
Oh,
oh,
wow.
how nice.
You
Yeah.
love that
I
stuff.
love
You like
that.
live for a high school sweetheart.
I live for
Yeah.
high school and college sweethearts.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met. We actually, like, our story's kind of insane. We are from the same hometown and we went to the same elementary school, but he was a grade older than me. And so I like didn't know him, but we were actually in speech therapy class together. And my older sister and his older brother were in the same grade.
Oh.
So they knew each other. And I did not know any of this, but then I transferred to the private school. He stayed in public. Eventually, he transferred over to the private high school and repeated his junior year for college basketball recruitment.
Yeah.
And when we started hanging out, he was like, yeah, did your parents go? And he said the name of the high school because my parents are also high school sweethearts, weirdly enough. And I was like, yeah, they did go there. Well, how do you know that? And he's like, my dad went there. I think they were friends. So his dad and his dad's 4 siblings all went to high school in a suburb on the main line in Pennsylvania.
Right.
With my parents, and we're very good friends. Like, my parents were very good friends with his
So it's
younger
really
brother.
terrific.
It's crazy.
I love
so
it.
when we Our parents are super close. So when we do stuff, it's like so intertwined. It's outrageous.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a different level of connection with somebody when you kind of have that similar upbringing or like
I'm sure.
path.
I think
Yeah.
it does. I mean, it makes for
Yeah.
one less argument to have because you've sort of coming from the same
Literally.
place. So, you know, you can argue over other things, but it won't be over where you like to eat dinner because you basically eat dinner in the same place that you've eaten in for 30 years.
Yeah.
So,
And we're not arguing about our in-laws. Like
exactly.
They're
Yeah.
so close and we're
Yeah.
so close with each other. It's amazing.
Yeah, we had
So
that.
nice.
We had that and it was very, very nice.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit to the podcast. Like you try to debunk these stigmas about marriage and motherhood. And what are some of those stigmas have you found personally? And like, where did they come from?
Oh, from the phone.
No,
Yeah.
I think they're like deep rooted in old
You think so?
patriarchy.
Oh,
But I want to
really?
hear from
Yeah.
Karen. Okay.
Well, when it comes to like motherhood, I mean, it's never ending. The judgment is very real across like every front. And it's so fascinating to observe and unpack. And, you know, some of the things like when it comes to parenting, when I talk about how we have divided like the labor in our household, we have a sitter who comes and my mother-in-law helps us, but we don't have a full-time nanny. We didn't have a night nurse. And it was really important to me that we like were equally dividing work in the household, and same with my husband. And so we sat down, we like had this whole system. I have a full episode on it. And it's kind of crazy how like the feedback is like, how did you get your husband to do this? Or, oh my God, I wish, or like, that's so crazy that he does these things. And like, even the simple things of if I go away alone to like a girls' weekend, the messages I get are always, who's taking care of your son? And I'm like, has my husband ever once been asked that when he goes on a trip with his friends? Like, no one has ever asked him that question. I've asked him. So little things like that, even, you know, speaking about going away, like judgment on deciding to take a vacation, the two of us, and not bringing our son with us, or forms of parenting. It's really just interesting to me that people care so much about what others are doing. And I think that you're both right in the sense that it's new and it's old. The patriarchal system that has like brainwashed us all into believing that the woman is the only person that should be doing anything house related in a marriage is old. But I also think that with the new world of constant communication, social media, ability to share, comment, all of those things, people feel obligated to share their opinions on others for some godforsaken reason.
Right.
Yeah. And so I almost think it's this like toxic combination of the two. It's people haven't totally worked through, myself included, like there are little things that'll happen. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's like some fucked up thinking that I have just inherited. But I also think that it's a weird combo now with the two that I don't think people have fully unpacked their own thought process, and then they put it onto someone else through
It's almost
social
like
media.
a competition. It's become a competition now. I've heard that from younger mothers who are saying, "Oh, my son or daughter is in a certain percentile."
Yeah.
Who cares?
Oh no, I
mean,
thought
you
you
know,
meant like
cares?
also in school,
Well,
like
that not even
they
in
get
school.
straight A's. Like
No,
cool.
like
That's
height and
different.
weight. Like they
Height
really
and
care
weight's
about
become
this.
a very big
Stop.
thing with babies. Yes.
Let me
Oh,
tell you, my
mine is
baby's
in the-
head was in the 99th percentile.
Yeah,
He has
exactly.
the
I never
biggest
heard of that
dome in the
before.
world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what
Not
is
a
that good or
competition.
bad?
Who cares?
His
They
head
all
being that
eventually
big?
catch up.
It wasn't ideal. Let me tell you, I can't
Right.
put anything over his head. Like I have to, like the certain outfits do not fit over his head, quite honestly. He grew into his head, but in the beginning, that was the only percentile I knew. Everyone
Right.
talking about their weight and height. I'm like, well, this kid's got a 99th percentile
Big head.
dome.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like people walk around, like I guess you want to be like average or normal.
No. Nobody wants to be average. They all want to be on the higher end.
Yeah, people want.
Nobody wants
yeah.
to be average.
No, but like with weight and
They-
stuff, don't
No, they
you
want
want
to
to be big?
Yeah, they want to be
Even
big,
that,
they
yeah,
wanna be
they're yeah,
tall.
they're like
No.
proud, well fed. I just
Exactly.
think it's the competition is really interesting. I see it, you know, even in myself. My son was a late walker, and I was like surprisingly okay. Just I had faith. Like our doctors weren't concerned. It wasn't
Yeah.
like he wasn't showing signs, and I was like, he'll figure it out when he wants to figure it out.
Right.
But then there was one day I remember feeling like judgment by some people in the park and like, oh, he's 18 months and he's not walking, or 17, whatever he was, 16 months. And I noticed that like the internal competition in my own brain took away from the opportunity I had in that moment to like enjoy myself with him. So I try really hard not to compare or compete.
Good
but
idea.
Yeah, it is interesting. Even
But
just
it's
the
hard.
messages I get. Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard. It's hard. I remember when our kids were growing up, and I don't even know if this is relevant anymore. They used to say the longer they crawl, the healthier they are. They used to not discuss the walking. They felt that crawling was very important. That probably was something my friend made up, or some book I read in Dr. Spock, some chapter. But I think
I'll take it.
But I liked it because my son was heavy, so he couldn't get up to walk. So I said, "See, he's crawling. It's perfect."
Exactly.
What is your relationship to like your friends now that you're a young mom, both the ones that aren't moms yet and then also maybe ones who are moms, and kind of comparing yourself to them?
The ones who are moms have been, I mean, all of my friends, I'm so blessed. I have such incredible girlfriends from all walks of my life. And it's really something that I'm so proud of, honestly. The ones who are moms have been so incredibly helpful and vital. I think as a new mom, you need someone else in the trenches with you who can just relate on that level of like what is happening, because my friends who are not moms, I love them equally and they're there for me in different ways, but they also, just because they truly hadn't lived this experience, can't fully relate when I'm bitching and complaining about something. Same way that I can't if someone's talking about something that I'm not experiencing. And so having a few very close girlfriends who gave birth around the same time was so important to me. Even just like, hey, have you guys ever experienced this? What should I do? What's your best recommendation for this product? I need something new, a new stroller. What do you think? Like, how'd you transition to one nap? The silly questions that you have no idea even exist until you're living this experience. And then also the dark days of being like, I feel awful. I am struggling big time. I need a pep talk of encouragement. You know, they've shared that same experience, and it is such a deep level of bonding in that way. And my friends who are not moms are also so incredibly supportive and want to be such a large role in my son's life, which means the world to me. There's nothing better than seeing your friends who love you, love your child just as much, if not more. I will say it was definitely hard in the beginning, and I think it was more so for me. I struggled with postpartum depression, and I felt like I didn't really have anything to bring to the table in the outside world. I felt really confident doing my motherly tasks when we were living in this bubble of early postpartum. And then I felt so lost outside of that. And I think because of that, I distanced myself a bit, just because I felt I couldn't relate. I couldn't bring anything. I didn't know what to say. But I honestly had a very open conversation with one of my close girlfriends. And we were like, look, we both kind of drifted apart during this period, but like, it was no one's fault. It was just the matter of fact, and made an effort to drift back, and it's as good as ever. And I think every friendship serves a different purpose. Not that relationships have to serve purposes, but I think all friendships will ebb and flow and be stronger at certain points. And as long as you know you have a good foundation, I think that's totally fine.
What's an example of something that like you felt more distant from during postpartum? Like, was it going out to bars and like drinking, or
Oh my God, I couldn't even.
You couldn't even do that. Who does that?
Yeah,
When you're having that, Kimberly?
What was confusing is also the timing of my birth. So I gave birth in May 2021, which we were still in like pretty heavy COVID.
Yeah.
But it was also the rollout of vaccinations. So it was like that 2-month period in June and July before the next variant hit. I forget what variant it was now. It was either maybe it was Delta, but it was when everyone thought COVID was like, oh, we're vaccinated, it doesn't matter anymore. And so it was crazy in New York City. Everyone was going out, like bars were packed. And so I felt really like, wait a second. People are finally returning to this world that we've missed so much. I'm jealous because I can't. And I just couldn't relate to things that were happening, like friends who were traveling or doing all these things when I'm like up all night long breastfeeding, covered in breast milk, spit up and shit, and feel like a zombie. It was just the level of, I think it was the inability to relate in that level of like what we're spending our time doing.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to ask a question, because you're not an older mom, but you're not a younger mom. So
Yep.
you had your child when you were just about 30, right? So how? And I'm so happy that you got help very quickly for postpartum, because
Me
some
too.
people, when I was we didn't even know what that was. We just thought you
Right.
were having the blues, and you know, you'd get over it. Who realized you were going through this? Did you yourself? Did your husband? Did your mother? Did your mother-in-law? I mean, how did you become aware of this situation, which happens to so many people? And especially, I'm going to ask a question afterwards, after you tell me who did it. Do you think it affects people more as they get older than younger? Is there any proof to that, or it doesn't matter what age?
So I don't know about the age.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know
curious.
any
We'll
like
have to find that out.
research. I would love to know the answer.
Yeah.
Who noticed? Honestly, I noticed big time. I've struggled with anxiety and like bouts of depression prior to having a kid, so I was definitely aware of it going into it. But my husband definitely noticed. My mom noticed. Like, I think it was pretty clear I wasn't fully myself. I would even say my community on Instagram noticed. Like, actually, someone just commented on a video I posted from an episode I did about like grieving the baby stage and this whole process and feeling like I'm nostalgic for the present right now. And someone commented something like, I watched you go through the like bouts of postpartum depression, like dark days to pick yourself up, to finding yourself as a new mom. And I forget that I shared very
intimate,
openly and real time. And it wasn't even whether I was saying I was depressed. You could just see it in my like everyday content. So I think it was also, I mean, I know people messaged me about that. Like, I hope you're doing okay. I'm thinking it was kind of obvious, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's so
do you have to take some kind of antidepressant to get over that?
I was so I was already on an antidepressant throughout my pregnancy. And so I increased my dosage, added my psychiatrist to the mix of professionals that I see. And then really honestly, like, set time to focus on things that made me happy.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of support around you. So you know
much.
what? My suggestion is give it to your mother-in-law, let the baby go with them, and you go out and have your hair done and walk around the block and have a manicure.
I love you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I genuinely don't understand how, if you're up all night, like with a crying baby and like doing like how you could possibly not be upset.
No, because
it's not fair though, because it's like,
well, life isn't fair.
You have to put everything else on pause, obviously, for something that's going to be probably the biggest like joy of your life. But still, it's like, I just feel like I would be sitting in that situation, like, exactly, like my friends are doing this, or my husband, like, is he up all night? Like what? Like,
so mine was with me, but not often.
Yeah,
some are, but not all.
Not all.
Yeah, the postpartum resentment is very real, whether it's towards your husband, whether it's towards people in the outside world.
Right.
It is real. Obviously, you would hope that there is this connection with the child. And I'm not saying that happens to all, because I know some struggle during that newborn phase, but that is that's the reason for it all. So you remember how important that is. I also think that for me, I'm hoping it will be a different experience mentally if like when I eventually go through this again, because I think for me, a lot of it was like, oh, this is my life now, as if I was going to be in that like
forever
2-month period forever, which is so not the case.
Not true. Right.
Yeah.
But it feels
each
very
stage,
permanent.
I have to tell you, there are other stages that you're going to go through that you're going to wish you were back to breastfeeding.
I'm sure.
The teenage years, you can lock yourself in the closet. So I think that it is part of being a parent, and it's part of life. And you know what? If you get help, as Cameron did. You get help, you get through it, and it's just a blip. It
Mhm.
really is a blip. It's
Right.
not a pleasant blip. No one wants to go through it, but it is just something that happens. And somebody who's not going through it really can, I don't think, can understand. They can have empathy with you, but they
Totally.
really don't understand the real depths that goes on.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask also about your relationship with your mom and your grandma, and like if that has sort of shifted in any way since you becoming a mom.
It's so interesting because I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of my mom. I don't think my relationship with my grandmother has shifted. I have two grandmothers who are still alive. And I've always been very close. I will say that my mom's side of the family, we have 9, or is it 8, 3, 12 women between
Wow.
my grandmother, my mom, her 2 sisters, and 8
Right.
granddaughters. So those 12 women are extremely close. Like, we have a group chat. We are texting all day, every day. We do trips together. Like, it's not normal. But it's something I feel so blessed to have. And of those 12, like almost half of us now are mothers. And I think that I'm so profoundly grateful for that support system
Right.
going through this. And also, it's definitely given me a new outlook on like what my mom experienced
Mhm.
raising the 3 of us. I'm like, wow, you really put your life on hold and made
Mhm.
us the priority and did an incredible job. And so I have so much gratitude for her. And I also will say, I think this is a very common thing that's happening in our generation right now. I'm a millennial technically, is working through how you were raised and taking parts of the parenting that you're inspired by and you want to continue. And then other parts where you're like, you know what? I don't know if that was the best.
Mhm.
I know you were doing your best, but times have changed and I
Mhm.
want to try and parent this way. And so that's been interesting to navigate with my mom,
Mhm.
as she spends a lot of time with my son, being like, even little things like diet culture has changed a
Yeah.
lot from
Talk
my
about
mother's
that all the time.
generation to mine. So, I made a comment to her a few years ago that was like, if you keep talking about yourself in this negative tone, you will not spend time with my children because they're not hearing this.
Mhm.
And that was honestly what really changed it for her, if we're being completely transparent. And I just think it's very fascinating to watch our generation navigate this as we have more information or more insight or more perspective on how these things affected us during our childhood and how we want to make sure that the next generation is not experiencing that.
Yeah, that's an interesting example because I feel like also, obviously, I don't know your mom, but most people in middle age are very set in their ways where they're not going to suddenly like change their
Oh, she's
behavior.
adaptable.
Oh, but
That
they'll
woman
change
is
if they
adaptable.
can't be involved with the
Yeah.
grandchildren. Trust me,
True.
they take a U-turn very quickly. There are a
Yeah.
lot of things they don't change, but that they'll change
Yeah.
for.
Interesting.
No,
And-
she's amazing. It's one thing I really admire about her is she takes constructive criticism very well. And she's always trying to keep up with the times in terms of like what is not politically correct, but like what maybe shouldn't be said anymore.
yeah.
Right. Well, we all have that. The
Exactly.
worlds are changing very quickly, so there's nothing we don't from today to tomorrow. We don't know what to say.
Yeah.
True.
Just shut up.
Just shut up is right.
I'm guessing your relationship with your husband has changed somewhat since becoming a mom. Like, how do you find romance time, sexy time, all
They
that?
have to.
Well, you have to. You're right.
You
I have
to.
an episode coming out in a few weeks that's all about like sex as parents because you have to make it a priority for I'm not even saying sex, but also just like time for the two of you. And that's something that we definitely, it's difficult in the beginning. It's near impossible to make time for yourself. But as he started to sleep more and as we started to get back into our worlds, we've really talked about making sure that we're making us a priority as well. And I actually saw this TikTok that was like, it's this girl, Rosie. I don't even know if she's an influencer. Maybe it was just like one of her videos went viral, but the idea of doing 2 dates a month where one's inside the house, one's out of the house, and you're responsible for planning one, your partner's responsible for planning the other, and then you rotate the next month. So we've been doing this for the past few months, and it is so fun to have these like designated nights planned where they're on our calendar from the month before. We book them. You don't move them.
Mhm.
And obviously you can do more than 2 dates. That's just what's feasible to lock in for us a month with a kid. We still are doing things outside of this, but even the surprise factor of it has added this like fun element. I have one tonight, so I'll see what's happening. He's in charge of it. So that's been really fun. We have taken a few trips this summer. We were in 4 different weddings that were not local. So like with those, we tried to make them trips. We did an Italy trip. We just got back from a couples trip with our friends. So really making it a priority to spend time with each other. And the sex thing is like, it's so wild, especially when you're conversing with other parents about this. Because the reality is like, you lose the spontaneity that sex always had. And that's just reality. You can't be as spontaneous as parents. There's another or multiple kids, people that are living with you, whose schedules you have to adapt to, who need you. It's not the same. Like, there's no denying that. But finding time for each other, making it a priority, and still making sure that there is that level of connection between the two of you, because it is really easy to fall into like the moving ships passing each other at night, like roommate only talking about task style of thing. So even if it's not like our designated date night, we also will try to like unplug at a certain hour, phones away, and like spend time together, not just doing our own thing next to each other.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's very important.
It's like it sounds so difficult,
It's
but like
not. It's really not difficult. I mean, but you know, everybody has different circumstances.
I guess relationships in general are never like,
it's not.
you don't have to plan.
Relationships,
they're
right?
work.
It just takes a little bit
work.
more planning.
Yeah.
And I mean, I will say, like, I struggle a lot because of my job. I don't have the best boundaries. And because I spend a lot of the time with my son, I'm like this weird combo working mom. I don't know what to call myself because I'm not a stay-at-home mom, but I'm not a corporate working mom with the nanny. So I don't know where I fall, but I am fucking exhausted by the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's also easy for me once our son goes down to be like, oh, I want to crank out 3 hours of work, when that's the time that
you shouldn't.
Really I should be spending with my husband. So I'm navigating that balance, which is more confusing for me than it is for him.
Yeah. Well, and just in general, like you are your own boss, and like over the last 4 years since starting your podcast, and that in general takes a lot of, you know, making your own schedule and kind of being on top of that and not allowing yourself to just like take every day off because you have the luxury to. So then it's all just added planning. Also, I want to say that you just joined Dear Media Podcast Network, which is really exciting. Is that going to change how the podcast is at all?
No, that was like a big fear of some people when I announced it. As a listener, the podcast will be literally the exact same. There will be advertisements, which is exciting on my end, as like now this can be more of a financial pillar for my business to then focus on, because the podcast is really what I want to focus on in the future. But for me, the only thing that really changed is obviously there's a new team member involved from Dear Media, who's like the producer of the show, working with their campaign team in terms of sales. And then also now I'm doing all recordings in studio, so that even like my solo episodes, I want that video content to push for trailers, because from a business perspective, and people actually find this very interesting when I talk about the business side of things on my Instagram stories. But for me, that's also what captivates a different audience, and it gets people interested in the show. So historically, I was doing solo episodes just here in my bedroom, and I do them now in the studio. But a lot of people have messaged me like, is it so weird talking about these things with other people there? I ask the team in the studio to actually just like set everything up and then leave, because I mean, in my solo episodes, I'm all over the goddamn place. I'm either hysterically crying or I'm talking about sex, like things that I don't need someone else in there for. I just want that space to myself. Yeah. So I think the only thing really is that it's elevated the show, and it's been something a network I've wanted to join for so many years, in hopes that it will help grow the show, bring on some more influential guests that maybe I didn't have access to, and honestly just get more ears, because that's the goal.
Yeah.
Sounds great. That's
so many
great.
questions about this, obviously, because we go through a similar thing with our podcast, but they can also be offline questions. But when you post clips now from the studio, do you feel like they have more engagement and more views than it was from your bedroom? So interesting.
Yeah. Well, so I was never recording video even in my bedroom.
Oh, okay.
I'm like a very I didn't
Kimberly's
fall.
recording videos all day
We have
long.
7 cameras doing this right now.
We have people follow.
Do you
She has
actually?
people- yeah,
We have 4.
we have a lot of cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
And she
God,
does
you
it
guys
all
are
herself. She's
legit.
amazing. She's amazing.
you.
Thank God she was a producer of a news show, so she knows where to go, because I'm just sitting there with the cameras whirling.
Well, you've got the best job then.
She's
Yes,
the
I do.
talent. She's the
Yes, I
talent.
do.
And then also, so it was a goal of yours from the beginning to
Yeah.
become part of a podcast network. So then what point in your career did those conversations actually start happening? And like, was it on you to kind of keep bugging them about it, or they came to you?
So I'm it's a no for now. I don't take no well. I understand I can be told no, and my mom will be the biggest supporter of me saying this. Like, I understand that people can say no, but in my head, I'm like, well, it's a no for now.
Yeah.
I could change your mind eventually. I'm determined. And for me, the show was always what I loved the most. I started it like in my living room pre-COVID times. I was recording, editing, producing all of the things on the back end. And the goal was always to join a network. And then once I always believe if you're doing something for yourself, if you're an entrepreneur of any sorts, you should know how to do something before you hire out, because God forbid the person you hire you're not able to reach them, or they quit for some reason. You want to make sure that you can do it on your own. So I was big on that. So I learned all the back end of everything. Then I started outsourcing a few things. In terms of the network, I actually had a call with someone from their team in 2020, and my numbers were just not where they needed to be for the show to be acquired, which I respect, I understand. And I don't think I really pushed the focus on my podcast until probably after having my son, because that really opened my eyes to a bit of I don't know if I want to be on social media sharing every detail of my life 24/7 as I continue to be a mother and have hopefully more children. And the podcast feels like the space where I'm able to have the most actual impact and more deeply discuss things that really are important to me and connect with people. And that being said, I started to really push the pedal on promoting the show, which I don't think I was necessarily doing the best job at before. And who knows if I'm even doing the best job now. I'm probably not. But once I started to promote the show started growing more and more. And then when I reached the number that they had originally said or mentioned, I reached back out and was like, it's me again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. You touched on something that I did want to ask about was as a creator, you have to make the decision, how much do I share about my relationship, my marriage, my children? There's some influencers that they post every
Say too
single
much.
second, and there's some that don't say it at all, and they're kind of like a secret, face in everyone's lives. Where have you found your space in that?
I've kind of gone all ends of this spectrum, interestingly enough. When I started, I was sharing everything real time because I didn't have a following. It was a few thousand people, and it was this really safe space. And I was sharing everything. And it was, I think, quite honestly, what helped me build such a supportive and engaged community, because they felt like they really did know me because I was sharing everything.
Yeah.
As I started to grow, I started to see that there are some negative side effects of that. People using information that you shared once suddenly against you, or, people just, quite honestly, not everyone's nice. Some people are really horrifically mean just to be mean. And once I started to experience that, I started simultaneously, it was while I was growing, I started to get a little bit creeped out by the number of eyes and pulling back a little bit. And, people will have opinions about everything is what I've learned. Certain members of my family don't necessarily want to be on my platform all the time, or even at all. Or my in-laws, I'm very conscious of asking people, hey, even when I go on a bachelorette trip, it's the first thing I say. Hey, I have these platforms. I typically share content. Can you let me know if there's anyone here that doesn't want to be included at all, or if there are any boundaries? Please tell me. I will respect them. I think that's so vital and important. And I'm the same way with my family. So certain members of my family just simply don't want to be on my platform. And that's simply their decision. And there shouldn't really need to be a conversation more than that. And, even my husband, he's always been a more private person. He's never had social media. So he doesn't want to be talking to my stories 24/7. And therefore he's not. Because of that, I also decided that I didn't want my son to be the face of my platform.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I will leave it at the fact of he's A, not consenting, B, it scares me from a security risk sometimes, and C, we don't know. We are the first generation, and I think we'll see it in a few years where these kids have been shared online as children and will eventually have the emotional intelligence and ability and verbal ability to speak how it impacted them. And I don't want my child to resent me for things that I was doing when he was a kid. And honestly, like, I say this, I'm not, everyone can decide what they want to do, but there's no denying that sometimes these children are used for like clickbait
publicity
and for likes and for publicity and for content. Like, there's no denying that. And it makes me feel uncomfortable. So I just didn't want to put myself in that position.
Yeah,
I
those
agree
are
with
all
that.
such good points. And it's interesting though, because what's the difference between me recording my kid doing something and keeping it on my camera roll versus posting it and sharing it?
Right.
Like,
well,
I
there's
don't
also
know.
a lot of sharing now, which almost unnecessary. I don't have to see a child in every outfit that they buy and buy for them. It's too much.
But
and
we do it for outfits you buy for me, but I'm consenting.
But we're also not putting it
so
on.
here's the other thing.
And that's your
Like,
job.
Yeah.
That's your job. I posted one, like in the beginning, I would share him like his face every once in a while. And some people get very worked up over the fact that I will share the back of his head, but not his face.
Right.
And this is the example I use. A daycare center in Manhattan who I've never spoken with, never been a client of, have no relationship with them, took the picture from my profile of me and my son and posted it on their page and used it as an advertisement for their daycare.
Right.
You could sue
Absolutely
for that
not.
though.
No,
Absolutely not.
Right.
Like,
You definitely could.
I don't know, because
I don't know
she's
if
a
you
public
can.
figure.
It's public content.
She's a public figure.
I don't think you can, honestly.
Right. No, I don't.
Yeah, but
think
if they're
you
getting
can.
paid for it,
No, I don't think so.
That's
No,
That
I
is
mean,
a
they
big
took it
problem.
down, but like that's literally
That's a
one of
problem.
it's like I
You
don't
don't
want
even
you
think of
can't
that, yeah.
control once it's out there. You
Yeah,
cannot
it's
control
out
where it's
there.
going
Yeah.
next.
Right.
wow. Okay, I want to end the episode with a game of Grandma Gail's old-fashioned dating quiz. We play this with all of our guests, where I'll just go through some hypotheticals.
I know where Cameron's going to be, so but we.
I actually don't.
We should have had my Nana on this episode.
No,
I'm
I
pissed
know.
at myself.
I didn't even think of, because sometimes
She
we
is
have guests
so
on with their
funny.
grandmas.
She is so funny. She's a
Well, maybe you guys
riot.
can come back another time.
Yeah, she's in some of my TikToks.
Okay. Oh yeah, wait. I think I have seen that. Yeah.
No, she is a
I'll
diva
show
to
you
the
later.
max.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go through some hypotheticals and then figure out whether you're more old-fashioned or more
Okay.
modern. Okay. Would you rather receive a call or a text from the guy you're with if it is just to say hi?
I call everyone in my life, like, annoyingly. I'm on the phone 24/7.
Would you sleep with someone on the first date?
Well, she's only had one date.
I've
What do you
literally,
know?
I mean, I would, but Grandma, I've slept with more than
gone on
but
other
I-
d-
I thought she was
no,
only
but
with her husband.
honestly, yeah, I would.
No. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Dating apps or setups?
I wasn't in, like, I've never been on a dating app,
Okay.
but I would prefer personally, I think, setups, because I don't think I would do that well on the dating apps.
Interesting. Why?
I'm not the best texter.
Okay.
Like, I just, yeah, I don't think I'd put in the time. I don't think I'd know how to text. Like, I just don't think I'd be great at it.
Okay. Fair. Would you move in together before getting engaged or wait until you are engaged or married to move in?
I would recommend moving in together before you're engaged.
And who should pay for the date? Should it be one person in the relationship or should you split everything or alternate?
Oh, it's so circumstantial. Like, is this the first date or are these just general dates?
I would say like in the beginning.
In the beginning, I think it's, okay, this is so interesting because this is another patriarchal thing where we're like, why do we just assume? But then also men do make more money, like, on the dollar than women do historically. So, like, they're just kind of making up for the gap that we're like experiencing every day. I honestly think it's fine either. That would not be a deal breaker for me either way.
You're pretty mixed. It's like me.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes,
similar to that.
yes, you're
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah. Cameron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Feel
Thank you so
better.
much for
Yeah.
having
Feel
me.
better.
And tell
thank
everyone
you.
how they can follow you, get your podcast, all that.
Oh yeah. Instagram and TikTok is at Cameron Oaks Rogers. There's no D in Rogers. And my show is Freckled Foodie and Friends, and I have new episodes every Wednesday morning.
Thank you guys for listening to the episode with Cameron. We hope you enjoyed. And thanks for listening to us. And you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We're at Excuse My Grandma. And tell your friends about the podcast. Rate us 5 stars. We'll see you next week.
Bye.